It was one of the most ruthless and shocking moments in European history. A queen, a princess of a foreign country, making her way to the guillotine for her execution after being ousted from the throne during the French Revolution. Marie Antoinette may have not been the smartest and most sympathetic queen, but she was known for her charm and beauty. But to the French people, she was absolutely hated. She was to them a symbol of greed and extravagance, whilst everyday French people starved and suffered. But with her execution, the shame did not stop there. Her head may have been taken off, but what happened to the royal corpse of Marie Antoinette was shocking, shameful and disgusting, and her remains were not treated with dignity at all. Later they were even dug up. In this video, we look at what happened to her remains following her death, and to support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. Marie Antoinette was born in Vienna, Austria, on November 2nd, 1755, the 15th child of Empress Maria Theresa and Emperor Francis I. Her early life was one of privilege and luxury. At just 14 years old, she was married off to Louis Auguste, the shy and awkward grandson of King Louis XV of France. The marriage was meant to strengthen the alliance between Austria and France, two nations that had long been enemies, and when she arrived in France, the young Austrian princess struggled to adapt. She didn't speak much French, and she found the strict etiquette of the royal court at Versailles suffocating. But when her husband became King Louis XVI in 1774, Marie Antoinette, then only 19, suddenly found herself queen of one of the most powerful kingdoms in the world. At Versailles, Marie Antoinette tried to escape the pressures of royal life by surrounding herself with a small circle of friends. She built a private retreat, the Petit Trianon, and spent her days there playing music, dressing in the latest fashions, and hosting lavish parties. Her expensive tastes and carefree attitude quickly became infamous. The people of France, meanwhile, were struggling. Food prices were rising, the country was in a massive debt, and millions of ordinary citizens were hungry. While they starved, the Queen was portrayed in pamphlets as heartless and wasteful. Some even called her Madame Deficit. One of the most damaging rumours was that, when told that the poor had no bread, Marie Antoinette supposedly said, "Let them eat cake." In truth, there's no evidence that she ever said this. It first appeared in writings years before her time, but the story captured what many already believed, that she was out of touch with the suffering of her people. By 1789, anger and resentment had reached a boiling point. The French Revolution began, and mobs filled the streets of Paris. In October of 1789, a crowd of women marched from Paris to Versailles demanding bread. They stormed the palace and forced the royal family to move to the Tuileries Palace in Paris, effectively holding them under guard. Marie Antoinette became a target of revolutionary hatred. Her Austrian birth made her suspect, and people accused her of conspiring with foreign powers to destroy the revolution. When she and Louis tried to flee Paris in 1791, their capture at Varnez only confirmed suspicion that they were traitors to the new France. After their failed attempt, the royal couple lived as prisoners in the Tuileries, watched constantly by guards, and in August of 1792, the monarchy was finally abolished after angry crowds, attacked the palace. The royal family was imprisoned in the Temple Tower, and France was declared a republic. King Louis XVI was tried by the National Convention, found guilty of treason, and executed by guillotine on January 21st, 1793. His death left Marie Antoinette alone, widowed and powerless. Her son, the young Louis Charles, was declared Louis XVII by royalists, but the revolutionaries soon separated him from his mother and placed him under brutal supervision. Marie Antoinette was then moved to the Conciergerie, a grim prison on the Ile de Sight, often called the antechamber to the guillotine. She lived there in a small, damp cell and under heavy guard. Her health deteriorated from stress and illness, and despite everything, witnesses said she carried herself with dignity, rarely showing emotion, even as her fate became clear. In October of 1793, the Revolutionary Tribunal announced that Marie Antoinette would be put on trial. She was accused of treason, draining the treasury, plotting against the revolution, and most shockingly, incest with her son, a charge based on false testimony extracted from the frightened boy. The trial began on October 14th, and the outcome was never in doubt. The prosecution painted her as the enemy of the French people, responsible for their misery and the bloodshed of the revolution. When asked about the accusation of incest, Marie Antoinette reportedly stood and said, "Nature refuses to answer such a charge made against a mother." Even the hostile crowd fell briefly silent. After 2 days of questioning, the tribunal found her guilty of treason. Her sentence was death by guillotine. At dawn, on October 16, 1793, Marie Antoinette was woken by guards and told to prepare for her execution. She dressed in a simple white gown, symbolic of purity, and tied her hair back so it would not interfere with the blade. Unlike her husband, who had to be driven to the scaffold in a carriage, she was placed in an open cart, exposed to the jeering crowd. The journey from the Conciergerie to the Place de la Révolution, today's Place de la Concorde, took nearly an hour. Witnesses said she sat upright, calm and composed, though pale. Onlookers shouted insults, but some were struck by her courage. When she arrived, she was led up the steps to the guillotine by the executioner, Charles Henry Sanson. As she climbed, she accidentally stepped on his foot and turned to him, saying her final words, "Pardon me, sir. I did not do it on purpose." Moments later, the blade fell. It was 12:15 p.m. The crowd cheered wildly, waving their hats and shouting, "Viva la République!" Her head was shown to the people, proof the Queen of France was no more. Immediately after her execution, her remains were collected up by the officials and the executioner, and they were placed on the back of a cart ready for burial. It's presumed that they were placed inside of a coffin immediately after death, but her head was not sewn back on. It was stuck in between the legs of the Queen in the coffin, meaning a symbolism of disgrace in death and dishonour. It was no way to treat the body of a queen or any member of royalty. After this, the coffin was taken to the Madeleine Cemetery, a place nearby where many victims of Paris's guillotine were taken. There, gravediggers were preparing the grave, and they were ordered to dig a shallow grave. They presumed it was the body of an everyday, defiant French person they were about to inter. They probably did not realise it was the remains of the Queen. After the coffin arrived, the body was dumped inside of the grave, and then copious amounts of quicklime were poured over it. The coffin lid was closed, and the quicklime covered the coffin lid and did not act as intended, as it actually solidified, which led to the remains being preserved further. Now, the grave was covered over, and for decades it was no secret where the Queen was buried. After the brief restoration of the monarchy, a call was made to exhume Marie's body and that of her husband. The exhumation began on the 18th of January 1815, and former gravediggers took part. The Queen's remains were found first, and it was said that a number of bones were found, including the skull, which was said to have been relatively intact. As the quicklime had solidified on the coffin lid, there was a degree of protection to the body. Also found was a woman's stocking, similar to the one given to her inside of prison to wear. And on her head were found some hair, the grey hair that she had become accustomed to in the final months of her life. It was a moving sight, and some even fainted or burst into tears. Now, these bodily remains were then placed inside of a chest, along with parts of the earth, and the wooden coffin fragments which were found. Some of the bones were actually missing, and the position of the skull being found between the legs also confirmed she had lost her head upon a guillotine through being severed from the body. One man who found the Queen's corpse said, "In this coffin we found a number of bones, but several were wanting, having undoubtedly been reduced to dust. The skull was entire, and its position indicated incontestably that it had been severed from the body. We also found remains of clothing, and particularly 2 elastic garters, in good preservation. The whole were placed into a chest and locked up. In another chest were deposited the earth and lime found mixed with the bones. The bones were then taken to the Basilia of St. Denis, where they were then interred inside of a royal vault, and today Marie Antoinette is still buried inside of this vault. But the truth is, the fragmentary remains of her body are. She is in no way a complete skeleton, and only her skull and a few other parts of her bones were interred in this vault. There is also some speculation as to whether this was even the Queen at all, as DNA evidence has never confirmed this. The body of Queen Marie Antoinette was treated with shame and disdain after the execution, and many believed she was the worst criminal in the whole of France. Many jeered when the guillotine came down, and one image even shows her head being displayed on a pike, a large wooden pole, so that everybody could see. Her image on the guillotine is a haunting one, and her body was treated awfully, but some of her remains are given somewhat of a royal burial. Thank you for watching, and to support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. And once again, thank you so much for watching.